direct conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't late to me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome back to Ret Conversations. My name is Josh Wasta, a.k.a. Fallout Fury. And with me, I don't think she can handle this, a cloudy day in Metropolis. It's Miss Leia Cameron.
Hello.
Very, very apropos.
Yes,
for today.
That was good. That was really good.
This is one of my favorite Spin Doctor songs, and I don't know why it didn't get more play on the internet. It's a fantastic song. But also with us, our special guest today, first-time guest for a graphically novel production, Mr. Tony Van Dyke. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna get into it very soon in this this episode of Red Sun, Superman Red Sun. Now, a little background, and then we will ask you about your history with comic books. But
sure thing.
Leigh and I have a history when it comes to people who suggest Superman stories for this show. We have done the death of Superman. We have done, and the Fates deleted it off of the hard drive. We've done All-Star Superman. We've not been huge fans of either one. But I will open this up and say, I like this one.
What a great Superman story. Okay, so I was just having this conversation the other day. This is now my second favorite Superman story.
Mine too.
And I have vocalized many times on this podcast that I'm not really well versed in DC, although I'm getting there, right? Yeah. Like I'm especially through
this show is doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And is in particular, I've always been pretty vocal historically, even pre-podcast, that I just don't give a shit about Superman. And I dared people to find me a Superman story that made me give a shit about Superman. This was actually recommended to me by multiple people over the past decade or so, and I have never gotten around to reading it. And I'm glad I did.
Yep, me too. I will say I know, Tony, that you would ask what our absolute favorites are. Mine is American Alien, which was done by Max Landis. A little problematic there because he's come out as kind of a douchebag.
Yeah.
He also has done, American Ultra, which is a movie that I really like, and Wrestling Isn't Wrestling, which is my YouTube video that I introduce people to wrestling with. And unfortunately, he's kind of a douchebag. But American Alien is fantastic and is my favorite Superman story that does not involve Superman being a villain.
Yeah, my favorite Superman story, and this is going to surprise no one who's heard this podcast. It's a Tom King story because, of course, it fucking is. I would follow that man backwards into hell. And it's called Up in the Sky. And I will tell you right now that I read it for the first time late last year, I believe. And it legitimately made me cry. I cannot recall the last time a comic book has made me cry. That was, prior to that, but it's a wonderful, beautiful story. I encourage everybody to go read it, especially if you don't care about Superman, because you will care about Superman.
Nice. Very cool. Right. All right. So Red Sun, let's get into it as soon as Mr. Van Dyke, if you could give us a little bit of your history of comic books.
Well, yeah. So this is, Leia, what you were saying about not caring about Superman. Like that's kind of where I was too, and that's where this recommendation came from for me.
Okay,
was that I was a huge comic book fan, like growing up, like mostly through like the 90s. I read a lot of Marvel, a lot of Image, and those were my core things. And as far as DC is concerned, like I watched some of the shows and movies and things like that here and there. But I never really read any of the comics. I think I read one or two during the death of Superman and Breaking of the Bat era, like a couple there, but I just really never dove into it at all. And so I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. This goes back years ago. We were just kind of on a road trip, and we had this habit of like getting into a lot of pop culture debates and things like we do. And I swear if we had been recording some of those, it actually would have made some great podcast content, but weren't really thinking ahead back then. But anyway,
that is what led us to this show, actually.
I'm right there with you on that. But anyway, we were talking about the same kind of concept of like, yeah, but Superman's like so completely OP. Like, how do you care about Superman? Like,
right.
There are good stories to tell about like being the last of his kind and things like that like can make for some good stories. But at the end of the day, like, he's always going to win. He's
right.
Superman. Like, they'll just retcon in something that he had never previously done before, and suddenly it's just like, oh, I fixed it, I solved it by this crazy power that you never knew about. And so I never cared. I never thought it was worth diving into. And then my buddy said, well, what about Red Sun? And so basically all I know about it is that it is more or less a what if story, that if Kal-El crash landed in Soviet Russia rather than in Smallville. And that's about the only framework I know about it. But I'm really interested.
You're in for a treat. You are in for a treat.
Yeah. That's all I knew about it too going in. And it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get into this here. Because that's the background I have, and I was just told, it's just really good story. But that's about it. That's all I know. So I'll let you go ahead and dive in.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So for anybody who is not tuned into us before, this is how the lesson goeth. Today's presenter is Professor L, Leia, who will be going through the entirety of the plot of Red Sun. As our guest, Tony can pull the emergency brake on the show at any point, stop it, and ask me, the assistant professor, Professor J, any question he'd like, or make a comment, or just stop everything because he needs a moment. We've had that a lot, especially with Onslaught. And it will be my duty as the assisting professor to answer his question. Now, if I cannot, I will throw it back to Professor L. If neither of us have an answer, we just throw up our hands and go, comic books. It is possible, since she is working on the front porch right now, we may be joined halfway through by the Baroness and Miss Jennifer Howland. If that happens and neither of us have an answer, we will throw it to her to just make up an answer. And as it is Superman, that would be great. So on that note, take it away, Professor L.
Okay, so the concept of Red Sun is basically like what if, in the Marvel universe, and this one is what if Superman but communism. It was written in 2003, and it actually only consists of 3 issues. There's Red Sun Rising, Red Sun Ascendant, and Red Sun Setting. And this was written by Mark Millar. Incidentally, I did not know this before reading it, but this series won an Eisner in 2004. So I think that's pretty cool. So we'll start off with Red Sun Rising, which is issue 1. And already things are kind of weird. We open on the city of Metropolis in 1953. Lois Lane is now Lois Luther, so that's a thing that's happened. Hot start. She is still a reporter for the Daily Planet, though, so that part is the same. Eisenhower is holding a televised press conference to reveal that the Soviet Union has a Superman. In this in this alternative universe, Superman fell to Earth in Ukraine. As a note, Ukraine became an independent nation in 1991, God bless them. But for the purposes of this story, Ukraine never became independent from the USSR. It is still referred to in universe as the Ukraine rather than just Ukraine, just as it was pre-1991.
Okay. That tracks.
Yeah. So I'd also like to take this moment to say that I stand with Ukraine, and I'm glad that Superman was raised there.
Right? Yeah, it feels appropriate this year.
Right,
right.
And,
yes. Doomsday, I shall put sunflower seeds in your pockets.
It's so perfect. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Doomsday would care. He's got trucks to smash.
It's true. He hates fucking trucks.
Fucking hates trucks.
Does.
So the U.S. knows at this point, and this is all revealed during this press conference, that he's an alien. He was raised by a farming couple in Ukraine, which again, very apropos because that's the breadbasket of that area. So very much like Kansas, the analog to Kansas here in the U.S.
Yeah, that also tracks.
And he has incredibly threatening superpowers like speed, flight, X-ray vision, super hearing, strength, toughness, and everyone's favorite, laser eyes. Predictably, the US is kind of freaking out about this. As an aside, the Kents do exist, except Pa Kent is dead. We see them very, very briefly in like one panel, or we see really Ma more than that. In the Soviet Union, Superman has been raised to promote the values of socialism, which is, okay. Unfortunately, it's Soviet Stalinist socialism, so
yeah, a little different.
Soviet propaganda films are really jerking him off as the ultimate superpower, and the president of the U.S. declares that the feds, the army, and CIA is basically all obsolete now. And Eisenhower asked to get Lex Luther of Star Labs on the phone. Young Lex Luther in this in general is just he's really something. This might be, and I don't have a ton of experience, admittedly, with like Lex Luther in the comics, but this guy is a real piece of work. He fucking loves chess. Remember that, because if you forget, this book will remind you each every other page.
This is what if Lex Luthor, but also Reed Richards.
yeah, very much.
All right.
You know what? I didn't put that together.
Wait, so he's more of a douchebag?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, right. He is.
Okay. Well, I am going to go ahead and pull the emergency brake here for just a sec, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess just from a point of view story, is this story told as in like we're following Superman, or we're following the usual cast of characters in America and like Superman's the villain? How's this?
It's periodically written from like the perspective of Superman reflecting upon these events. So it's kind of a first person perspective for some of it, where basically there's this, for all intents and purposes, like a voiceover, where he's talking about like, I this and I that, but it's not always written that way, because it kind of switches back and forth.
Yeah, I was kind of curious, why would Ma Kent ever even enter into the story if it doesn't start there?
I think that the reason that there was that nod is basically just to show, like, because you're going to come across during this story, you're going to come across a lot of analogs to to other characters that exist in the normal. I keep on wanting to call it 616. It's not 616.
DC refers to these as Elseworlds.
Okay.
So there is Prime World, I think, is what they ended up calling it now, or Earth One, and then there's Elseworld. So there's the Red Sun world, and then there's regular continuity.
Okay.
Yeah, I only knew a little bit about like the Earth 1, Earth 2, and the whole Crisis thing. I'm vaguely familiar with that because, again, not much in the DC.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's something that we'll kind of come across them, and I'll point it out as we come across them. I think the inclusion of the Kents was just to be like, these characters do exist, but they have never met Superman.
Right.
Okay. Fair enough. Question answered. Thank you. Carry on.
So Lex Luthor really fucking loves chess. And to demonstrate how smart he is, he's reading Machiavelli and playing chess simultaneously with like 14 other people at once. Jimmy Olsen is a CIA agent now, and he comes to visit Lex on behalf of the president to ask for his help with some anti-Superman deterrence. Lex really has nothing for him at this point, but he's been doing some puzzles to keep his mind busy while he works out something to thwart Superman. In the meantime, however, he's casually come up with a formula to balance the federal budget, as well as a permanent cure for inflation. So they're really hammering home that Lex Luthor is a dazzling super genius here.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like we need to hire this guy. That's great.
Well, that's why the president came to him.
Yeah, he's playing chess with like 10 different people at the same time while also teaching himself Urdu. It's annoying, like the levels of show-offmanship that he's doing, but Lex Luthor meets Reed Richards.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that tracks for me.
So Lex and Lois are married, as I mentioned earlier, and their relationship is not super great. He mainly ignores her to play chess, and this dude sounds fucking exhausting. She rails on him for a little bit for not solving the Superman problem yet, and he assures her that he's on it. he reads the paper for like 2 seconds and then comes up with an idea. And when Lois asks exactly what it is, he blows her off and basically is like, this is a government level need to know basis. Later, babe, and gets on the phone. Meanwhile, Superman is rolling around the world just saving people because that's what he does. And this is a younger, at this point in the story, this is a somewhat younger version of Superman. His outright age is never stated, but he does mention he came into his powers at about 12. And so he does mention in his first person perspective that his powers were still kind of new to him at the time. So he's rolling around saving people, and the Soviets lose control of Sputnik 2, and it starts falling to Earth. The trajectory, the expected trajectory is Metropolis. This will obviously cause a catastrophic level of death and devastation, and Superman shows up and stops it by essentially hurling it into the ocean. He
One way to solve it, I guess.
He also, because it like kind of pings around a little bit, and the globe on top of the Daily Planet building kind of becomes loosened by this and starts to fall to Earth. So he manages to stop the globe from crushing people on the ground below, one of those people being Lois Luther. He also manages to simultaneously retrieve a balloon a little boy has let go of in shock and hands it back to him. And this panel really is fucking iconic. Yeah. I really love this shot. Like if you pick up the book and you see this panel, it's a beautiful shot of Superman with the whole world on his back, basically the Daily Planet globe, handing the balloon back to a like awestruck little boy. The art in here is really good.
And his Superman S has been replaced by a hammer and sickle on his chest.
Yes, that's very important to note. His costume is not is not the same as the Earth one.
Yes.
I'm gonna get the hang of this. I almost said Earth 616. I got
it. I mean, I'll be following along with that either way. That makes sense to me. But I guess if I could pump the brakes again. So he said he's been like flying around the world and saving things. He stops Sputnik from destroying an American city and saves American citizens from this. So he's still pretty much Superman, but just raised with these other, ideals in mind, right?
Right. So I mean, he's basically kind of the inverse of what Earth 1 Superman is, where Superman is American, quote unquote, and helps out America, but he also doesn't really let borders define him in terms of saving people. He's not like, oh well, something bad is happening in Estonia, so I guess I don't care.
Okay, no, that's good to know, both for perspective in this story, but also just in general, like thinking about that. Like again, I never read Superman, so back during like Cold War era, like how did they treat that? Did he randomly save Russians? I don't know.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the thing, is like this is it's implied that this is like the first major catastrophe he's averted in the US in terms of like the scale of destruction. Like he has saved, millions of people's lives by averting this Sputnik 2 crash. But this is the Superman I like. This is the Superman that I enjoy. Lois sees him, makes eye contact with him, and is immediately low-key horny for Superman. But she's married, so Supes is like, oh well, and dips. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor asks Jimmy Olsen, the CIA agent, to retrieve the satellite from the ocean because it has some of Superman's genetic material on it because he touched it. This is actually pretty fucking savvy of Lex, and also I got to give credit to Mark Millar, because it just so happens that Watson and Crick discovered the double helix structure of DNA in 1953. I will not go into the history of scientific discovery of genetics at this time, but I could. Anyways, it absolutely follows that Lex understands ahead of his time how to acquire trace DNA, analyze and synthesize it, because, he plays a lot of chess.
Right. I seem to have heard that somewhere.
Superman.
This is also where we find out, by the way, because it wasn't made abundantly clear, Lex crashed that satellite.
Yes.
He set up all of this.
He set this up to cause this catastrophe, to get Superman to come to the US, basically to see what this guy's made of, basically, but also to try to get a hold of his DNA, which
that's a heck of a gambit, but that sounds like Luke or
right.
Luther. I mean,
right.
Yes.
So, Superman at this point is still just running around indiscriminately saving people from stuff, which causes him to dip out even on his own. I typed in on my notes, Homelander Day Parade.
Yes.
Which Stalin actually doesn't seem to mind too much. This is where we meet a fellow named Pyotr Roslov, and Pyotr is the AU counterpart, basically, of Peter Ross. In this universe, Pyotr is Stalin's illegitimate son, and at this time he is head of the NKVD, which is basically like the state police agency, for all intents and purposes. And he is very clearly more than a bit jealous of Superman, because he feels that his father gives Superman far more attention than he does to himself. Meanwhile, Stalin and Hippolyta of the Amazons, so I believe she's Wonder Woman's mother?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. They are kicking it at the Homelander Day after party. And Stalin tries to recruit the Themyscians and also bone Hippolyta, and that's a no from them on both. They decide to maintain political independence for now, and Hippolyta is not interested in boning Stalin.
You got to try, I guess.
He tried to shoot his shot, and it didn't go well for him.
Yeah. She literally is like maybe if you were 5,000 years older.
Ouch. All right.
At this after party, Superman also meets Diana, otherwise known as Wonder Woman, and she is absolutely enchanted with him. And Superman kind of confides in her that he's a little bit uncomfortable with all the attention. And she just thinks he's the bee's knees. Like she's so excited to meet somebody that, as she says directly in the book, is like her, has these unusual powers and is kind of a celebrity in his local country, et cetera, and so forth.
However, Superman was not made of clay.
Right.
Feels like there's a good dwarf joke in there or something, but we'll move on.
Good old Gollum joke. So Stalin tells Superman he ought to have kids with Diana, but Superman is a bit distracted as he notices that Pyotr is missing and dips out. Pyotr is actually drinking and angrily shooting at a scarecrow, which is not a metaphor. He is big mad that he didn't get invited to the party and claims that Superman is the opposite of Marxist doctrine that all men are created equal because he's superpowered, and also he's not a man, he's an alien. Right. And also his dad likes Superman better than him. So
I can see there being some contradictions there, and also some jealousy. Okay, sure.
Yeah. He notes to Superman that he recently shot 2 dissidents that were distributing anti-Superman leaflets in a dark alley, leaving alive their 9-year-old little boy who, after he shot the kid in the shoulder, glared at him strangely and gave him the creeps. Rumor has it that the kid disappeared into the sewers to lick his wounds and swear revenge. Who could this weird, intense boy whose parents were shot in an alley be?
No clue.
Especially since the person who just murdered his parents stares at him and goes, "Go on, get out of my sight. Your parents are dead." Then says, "Don't walk, run," and shoots him in the shoulder so he goes quicker.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's
the next panel shows the kid on his knees screaming, surrounded by a bunch of bats. It's a mystery. We'll get back to that kid later.
I have no clue what this could be leading up to. I'm in the dark here.
So is that kid. So
the darkness, no parents.
Exactly. That's really like when that song started playing in my head when I saw that panel. So anyways, a drunk and depressed Pyotr tries to shoot himself in the head in front of Superman, who of course stops the bullet. Pyotr swears that Superman is going to be the worst thing that ever happened to them, and is about to confess something to him when Superman hears someone shouting for help in Moscow and just takes off. What that cry for help is on account of how Stalin has been poisoned with cyanide, and he shortly dies thereafter. Like, they try to save him, but there's no fixing that. He croaks.
Wait, you mean Superman doesn't have some heretofore unannounced power that he can just suck the poison out of him somehow?
It's actually pointed out explicitly in the comic that Superman is not a doctor.
All right.
Like,
even though he runs into a room and starts reading,
yeah,
like medical books.
Yeah, he still does not get his doctorate in time to save Stalin, so he dies. Meanwhile, in America, Luther has created what he calls Superman 2. Superman 2 is basically Bizarro Superman. He has created this using Superman's genetic material that was discarded on that Sputnik 2 crash, and so that's a thing that happens.
Right, and what could go wrong?
Right, exactly. Superman, meanwhile, is now invited to become the head of the Communist Party, which he initially rejects. Lex Luther plays chess with Bizarro Supes, and then Supes and Bizarro fight. As they are fighting, a panicked person in a submarine that has been kind of following this fight releases a nuke that's aimed at London. Superman is essentially frozen in place by Bizarro Superman, and inexplicably, Bizarro Superman sacrifices himself to get hold of this nuke and fly it out to detonate in space, where he then dies.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a thing that happens. So that first plan of Lex's just fails terribly. Like, it kind of alluded to that the genetic material that he was able to recover was somewhat corrupted, which makes sense because it did go into the ocean.
Yeah, I had that thought as well of collecting DNA from okay.
Not to even mention what the radiation of re-entry would do to the Sputnik satellite.
Right.
This
is actually, I actually thought that was pretty clever again of Millar. Like, this, it does make a certain kind of sense.
Something, I don't know, about Earth's yellow sun, maybe I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was very cool. I liked that. So meanwhile, at Stalin's funeral, Supes sees his childhood crush, Lana Lazarenko, which is the AU Lana Lang. And it stirs something in him, but he doesn't act upon it. He's just like, oh, that's interesting. There's that broad that I used to, crush on. Lois Luther, meanwhile, is quietly being horny for Superman on the roof of the Daily Planet when Lex calls to tell her that their marriage is on an indefinite hiatus while he finds a way to defeat Superman.
Okay.
Like, it's pretty much established repeatedly over the course of this series that Lex is married to Lois, but doesn't really like her very much or care about her really very much at all. It's unclear as to why they ever got married in the first place, but here we are.
But specifically, he now needs to destroy Superman because Bizarro Superman beat him at chess.
Yes. Hey, he's killed all of his Star Labs employees and is particularly pissed because Bizarro Superman beat him at chess the previous night.
Now we understand his true motivation. Okay.
It's this guy and his fucking chess on. God, come on. Later on, Superman runs into Lana in a bread line trying to get food for her kids. And she kind of explains to him, like, hey, look, you can't solve everybody's problems. Like, this is, this kind of sucks, but like, what could you possibly do about it? And this is when he decides that he can, in fact, solve the problems of the USSR if he becomes the new leader, and basically, tells people, you don't have to be hungry and scared anymore because I will save you. And that is how the first issue ends. So when we pick up in Red Sun Ascendant, which is the second issue, this takes place roughly about 20 years later. We open up on Lex Luthor cursing out the fact that Brainiac has accidentally shrunk down the city of Stalingrad and put it into a bottle. It was supposed to be Moscow that he was going after, but it's Stalingrad instead. Superman is infuriated by this and goes after Brainiac's spaceship and steals the CPU from Brainiac, and he also gets possession of the Stalingrad in a bottle from Lex Luthor. But he cannot figure out how to embiggen it. He has no idea how to restore it to its original size. Meanwhile, Lex is also now electrocuting people who he plays chess with like a fucking maniac.
Okay.
So every time they make a wrong move, he just zaps them. It's like the Stanford prison experiment on steroids.
There are at least 92 tables at this point, by the way.
Yes.
Because we do see 92, like the little table tent with the little card that says 92.
Yeah. So he's just chess playing through life here. We cut back over to a place that is called the Superman Museum, where an ordinary looking dude is just kind of taking a guided tour through it. During the course of this tour, we learn that the CIA has basically created an entire rogues gallery of supervillains that were created to stop Superman, including the Parasite, Atomic Skull, Metallo, and Bizarro, but none of them to date have worked. The Soviet Union has allied with all nations across the globe at this point, save for the US and Chile, and those two are not doing too well under capitalism. I feel like there's a metaphor here.
Probably several.
Yeah.
Superman is, as it turns out, actually a pretty good leader. According to the museum, poverty, disease, and ignorance have been virtually eliminated from what's called the Warsaw Pact states. So all the other nations across the world that have joined in this Warsaw Pact.
The tour guide, however, is super sus. Because he has a large metal thing on the side of his head.
Yes. We will explain that very shortly. But they also note that dissent and disobedience have been eliminated as well. This ordinary looking dude goes into a bar where a man sitting at the bar is just sort of complaining into the air about Superman's omniscience and wishing that this Batman character would take him out. Ordinary dude cautions him to be careful because, ears are everywhere, and this guy has super hearing. He can hear you. And this is where we learn that dissenters are turned into what are called Superman robots. They basically have a re-education implant in their brain that corrects their behavior.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question there about well, if everybody's united here and all these problems have been solved, what's going on with the dissent? Is it massive crackdowns? Oh, okay.
Mechanically lobotomized.
Yep. And given happy little implants to make them love communism. I
was going to say Big Brother, but yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, same difference for the purposes of this story anyway. This dude is, as it turns out, Bruce Wayne / Batman. This ordinary looking dude that
I'm shocked by this revelation.
Yes. He tells the bartender basically to hey, get our friend a drink and let him know where you can meet up with some like-minded people later. Hint, hint. But meanwhile, in case anybody asks, I was in here drinking the whole time. And then we cut over to an announcement over a PA at the Superman Museum, where Batman announces that in 4 minutes, the museum is going to blow up, along with 4 other targets. And he urges civilians to evacuate unless they want to martyr themselves for the cause. And then everything just explodes.
Okay. So quick pause there. So Batman blows up a bunch of buildings, including the Superman building.
Yes.
Part of his master plan?
Well, it doesn't necessarily say that it's the 5th of November.
I see.
This actually
plot. Yep.
This actually will be explained very shortly.
B for Vendetta.
in this AU, Batman is an anarchist rebel, and I personally love this journey for him.
I do too.
It's pretty great. He also, and my notes here says he also has a cute hat. So
hey, no, that is important to note.
So the Batman cowl, right? Like picture that in your mind, what that looks like, and then imagine one of the like the bear skin like Cossack hats kind of being attached to the front, and that's what that looks like. So he's got like a white fur
in between the ears.
So it's kind of this very like the God, why am I'm totally dysnomic because I own one of these hats.
Is it a babushka?
No, babushka is like a hair. That's like a hair covering.
Oh, okay.
This is one of the furry round hats, which I cannot remember the name of. But yeah, so it's his cowl is basically a mashup of those two things, which is kind of adorable. I know it's not meant to be adorable.
Anushanka.
Thank you. Yeah, I really got to get back to my Duolingo Russian studies.
I just threw fuzzy Russian hat into Google.
Meanwhile, I had to Google it to see this, and all right, I'm down with this.
Yeah, right between the ears.
Yeah, it's great. It's perfect, and I love it. There's nothing wrong with this man. So he is chased down, quickly kind of found on the roof of wherever he's at, and is chased down by some government helicopters and other ground agents, but manages to evade all of them because Batman. Peter, meanwhile, is pissed that Batman has gotten away, and he complains to Superman about it, but Superman insists that there must be no killing. This pisses Peter off further, but Superman, once again, Peter is trying to talk to Superman, and Superman is like, yeah, hang on, I gotta go, and dips off to go save more people. I can kind of get why Peter is perpetually annoyed with Superman, frankly. Superman later then visits Themyscira to chill with Diana, who has converted to communism fully. She's also his international peace ambassador and a champion of social justice.
Interesting. Okay.
They go out together to save some folks, and just complain like the entire time as they're like saving people from burning buildings and stuff like that. As they're doing this, they're just kind of complaining amongst themselves about the shithole nation of the US, where, as an aside, it turns out that Nixon was assassinated in 1963. Superman confesses that he's a bit uncomfortable with people who are now acting kind of recklessly due to his presence. They're not wearing seatbelts. They're just kind of behaving very cavalierly about like whatever it is that they're doing, because Superman will just save them, right?
So communist alien Jesus take the wheel?
Yes, 100%. Is like people are like, oh yeah, I don't need to worry about going 90 miles an hour down the highway without a seatbelt, because if my car crashes, Superman will stop that. It's also noted here that Diana is clearly horny for him, but somehow Superman does not notice this in any way, shape, or form.
Or he won't acknowledge it.
Yeah, he more that he doesn't. He seems to, in his perspective, retelling of this is that he didn't know it then, or didn't see it then. He knows now, but he does not at the time. He didn't at the time pick up what she was putting down, if you will. At the Daily Planet, meanwhile, Lois is now the new head editor. Somehow she and Lex are still married, but everybody seems to be aware that he doesn't give a shit about her. Like everybody at her work is just like, yeah, your husband's kind of a dick who doesn't treat you right. And she's like, yeah, well, but he's my husband.
But I love him.
Oh boy, there's all kinds of markers of abuse there that should be addressed, but let's move on.
Yeah. Well, quick aside, just because we haven't done one of this show yet. My brother, when he was in law school, had a summer internship at the local courthouse, and I would pick him up at the end of the day, and he would always give me a new thing that he learned. And one thing that he learned is if people choose to be willingly stupid, they will continue to be willingly stupid, because there was a judge put in a restraining order after this guy had almost beat his girlfriend to death. She was in the courtroom, had checked herself out of the hospital to be like, you can't keep him from me. I love him.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a background in psych, and I have also learned way too much about abusive relationships and the patterns of those. Yeah. So I'm not surprised by any of this.
But I mean, during my time working for the child support division as a paralegal for a lawyer, I can tell you that one of the most baffling things to me that I saw, and it's pretty common. It's not like this isn't one specific case, but this happened dozens of times during my time there, is that people would do shit like, this man beat the piss out of me, hospitalized me, set fire to my house, keyed my car, killed my dog. But it's important that my kids have a relationship with him.
Nope.
Exactly. I was like, well, why? It's like, oh, well, they need to have a relationship with their dad. No, ma'am, they do not.
Right.
Who
very,
told
very
you that?
distant relationship. Very, very distant.
Like, you keep your kids away from this man. He tried to kill you. And it's like, oh, well, they need to know their dad. No, they don't. So I think there's a lot of that in play here. Yes. So Superman does not quite realize at the time anyway that Diana would really like to get with him. It also is another aside too, in this Superman is pretty sexless. Like, this communist version of Superman does not, he pretty much kind of reads as asexual. He does not seem interested in anybody in a romantic or sexual way.
Fair enough.
So, okay, yeah. So Lois is the new editor of the Daily Planet. Somehow she and Lex are still married. Everybody knows that he doesn't give a shit about her. She still goes to visit him at the LexCorp building for their anniversary. And of course, he is a dick to her almost immediately. He's like, yeah, just leave the present you got me on the table. I'm busy. I didn't get you anything. By the way, Jack and Norma Jean are coming over tonight. Jack Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe are coming over tonight for dinner on our anniversary to talk to me about UFOs, specifically something that was found at Roswell in 1947. There was an alien and some mysterious technology that's been discovered. He wants to learn more about that. It's also noted, although you can pretty much assume that this is the case anytime he appears in a panel, that he's been playing chess the entire time.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've gone for a whole paragraph here talking about Lex, and chess hasn't come up, so
exactly.
I figured it had to be in there somewhere.
You can pretty much assume at this point that you're going to see a chessboard somewhere on the panel. In Moscow, meanwhile, Pyotr has been kidnapped by Batman, or I don't know if kidnap is the right word. He's forcibly taken to meet with Batman because Batman's like, heard you want to talk to me. Pyotr proposes to Batman that they join forces with Lex and the CIA to kill Superman because Batman is the only human that Supes hasn't beaten yet. Batman agrees under the condition that after he kills Superman, he's going to kill Pyotr. Basically, he's like, look, I know you killed my parents. I will kill you next. President Superman's birthday celebration is interrupted by the bat signal in the form of fireworks that were originally intended to be the shape of like the hammer and sickle chest panel thing. So it's a message to Superman. Batman has kidnapped Diana, Wonder Woman, and bound her in her own lasso. Superman then shows up and sees that Batman, using his X-ray vision, he's swallowed a bomb as kind of an additional safeguard. And as they are conversing, he gets hit with red lights that Lex Luthor made that are simulating red sunlight, and that naturally weakens Superman. They fight, and Superman gets cornered in looks like a basement bunker thing that's fitted out with these red lights. Batman begs Diana to break her lasso that's gotten her tied up.
Superman does. You said Batman.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I wanted Superman. To make sure we don't get confused.
Yeah. No, Superman.
One more quick pump the brakes there. So you said that these red lights were developed by Lex. So is he like openly supporting Batman, or is Batman stealing his tech? Do we know?
They're all working together. Batman had agreed that he will work with Pyotr and Lex and the CIA to get rid of Superman because they just can't deal with him anymore. And Pyotr, of course, being really jealous of Superman, has always kind of nursed this grudge against him. So he betrays him and his country by working with the U.S.
Classic. And also one little side comment there. I do find the irony of the light of a red sun in Red Sun.
Right, exactly. It's we said the thing, we said the name.
Say the line, Bart.
Yeah.
So he begs Diana to break the lasso that's her lasso that's bound her and turn off the lights, and she does. It takes a lot, but she does manage to break it, shut off the lights, and Superman immediately just gets his powers back, gets out, and is ready to lay the smackdown on Batman when Batman informs him that Piotr has betrayed him and then blows himself up. His legacy and the bat symbol live on in underground freedom fighters. So you kind of see a couple panels of that, how that shapes up. Diana, meanwhile, is irreparably broken after the fight. Her hair is white, and she is basically goes like semi-catatonic. Like, it's described in the book as like, she basically just eats, sleeps, exists. Roslav, meanwhile, Piotr has been turned into a Superman robot, re-educated for the good of the state. It's also noted that Superman has built a fortress of solitude in Siberia, which is otherwise known as the Winter Palace. And that is how
that feels appropriate.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, say that feels appropriate. Siberia's fortress of solitude. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. But that is how the second book ends. So
we did miss a small part with Jack Kennedy and Luther when they went to New Mexico. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. So Kennedy and Luther go to New Mexico, and they see the ship basically, which has the Green Lantern symbol on it, the crashed alien ship. And they're like, we found some stuff, and then that's kind of where they leave it. So it's alluded to. They've got the Green Lantern ring.
See, okay. I was not up on my DC to pick up on that. Like the Batman stuff is very blatant, obviously, but the crash landed alien, like what else could that be other than something else from Krypton? Oh, right, that one. That one.
No, you're not alone in that, because when I was reading this too, I was like, I don't know what that means.
All right. I feel better about that. Okay. So admitting my ignorance here to the DC universe and whatnot. Yeah, my bad.
It wasn't until I actually saw the cut of the ship with the big Green Lantern symbol on it that I was like, oh, I know what that is.
Right.
So now we move into the third and final issue, which is called Red Sun Setting. At the open of this book, Superman's voiceover basically informs us that 6 billion communists now inhabit the Earth under his rule. Brainiac has been retrofitted basically into an ally of his. So Brainiac works for him now. There is no crime. There is no hunger. There is no discontent. The Batmen, the people who were basically living up Batman's legacy, have all been turned into Superman robots and forcibly rehabilitated. The water supply across the world, there's Prozac in it now to prevent suicides. Life expectancy is 112. Birth rates are up. Productivity is up. And even Lex Luther has been strangely quiet. The U.S. is still a shithole country. Brainiac suggests invading, but Supes does not want to convert them by force or by fear. He's like, hey, look, we got everybody else to just kind of cooperate with us. We didn't have to bust any skulls. I'd like to continue that. As of 2001, Lex Luthor is president. He ceases trade, like external trade with other countries, in favor of a very strict internal market. He manages to double the American standard of living, not once, but twice. He eradicates homelessness and poverty, and the 16 states that had defected after Civil War II, not the book.
Okay. We just gloss right over. Okay.
Yeah.
Not 2024 in American history.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's because this also kind of opens on a bit of a time jump. So we kind of, the last one was sort of like in the 70s, and this one now is more. I'm assuming
2001 is when Lex was elected.
Was elected, and so I'm assuming that this one pretty much takes place in the present day of the time when the book was written, so like 2002, because it mentions like these are the things that Lex did in his first like 6 months to a year. So I feel like this final issue is set in about 2002.
Fair enough. So we're roughly 50 years worth of history here.
Yes. And yeah, the 16 states that had defected after the Second Civil War, and I wrote in my notes, come on, we can guess which ones.
Yeah.
16 states that had defected after the Civil War returned to the US and repatriated. The only thing that isn't doing well is the Daily Planet newspaper, because Lex is a dick to his wife. Basically, like it seems to be that the newspaper is like going under, and Lois is like, this is literally the only business he has not bothered to save, and it's because he hates me. Meanwhile, speaking of Lex, he is confident that he's got one over on Superman, and reveals to CIA agent Jimmy Olsen that he's discovered the Phantom Zone, which is a place where Superman can't hear him or read his thoughts or whatever. Meanwhile, at Area 51, the Green Lantern Marine Corps are being led by Hal Jordan. They have figured out the secret passphrase to make the Green Lanterns green. I'm going to admit right here, I don't know shit about Green Lantern.
Okay, so all the rings.
And in Darkest Night, yeah.
There's a lantern, and the lantern charges the ring. But if you don't know the phrase, it won't charge the. So basically, if you don't have the right adapter.
Oh, okay. So they're still on Lightning, and everyone else is using USB-C. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's the only part. Like there were a couple parts where I had to like phone a friend because I was like, what is this? What does this mean?
And the other important part of this, if you know, I am not by no means an expert in Green Lantern, but I know enough to know at one point Jimmy Olsen is like, okay, it's kind of weird though, Lex, that you didn't take the ring for yourself. And he's like, yeah, it works on creativity and willpower, and I tried. So, but you also find out that in this world, Hal Jordan was a POW for 4 years, and he was tortured by communists in Malaysia every day. He was starved down to 90 pounds. He was beaten every day. He basically had like bamboo put under his nails, and he only survived thanks to his willpower, because while he was in captivity, he built a concentration camp in his mind. So as long as it would take to dig trenches, he dug trenches in his mind. And as long as it would take to build buildings, he built buildings in his mind. Also one day he could have like the daydream of killing every communist that he has seen in his life.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're like Hal McCain here with all the POW stuff, and then building. Okay,
let me just tell you. Okay. I prefer Green Lanterns that do not get captured.
Oh my God!
This podcast is over.
Thanks everybody for tuning into the last episode of Red Conversations.
We've had like 8 last episodes, I feel like, at this point.
It's true.
Where the hell was I? I've lost my place entirely. That was great.
Themyscira.
Oh, okay. Yes. So Diana and Lois are now kind of hanging out on Themyscira and just complaining about men being dicks, which I'm here for. It's a great conversation. But Lois's real purpose is to ask for the Themyscirans' support when Lex attacks Superman, which she advises will happen sometime within the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, in the micro city of Stalingrad, a bug, I guess, destroys 40 blocks because Superman neglected to check on it. It seems that they've got like air filters on this thing, and he's supposed to check it like once a day. He doesn't do it because he's off, saving people and being President Superman and whatnot. and Bug gets in and just destroys half the city.
All right, whose turn was it to check on the ant farm this week?
Exactly. But he feels incredibly bad about this. So this micro city of Stalingrad, he feels a lot of guilt over not being able to restore it to its full size. And everybody in the city is just kind of trapped in there being small. And he actually kind of takes Brainiac to task for doing it in the first place. Like, what kind of maniac would do this? And Brainiac kind of deflects that a little bit and starts to encourage Superman again to invade the United States when Lex Luther interrupts. Like, he just shows up. But he's not there for too long because Brainiac kind of captures him and I don't know how to describe this, like robot tentacles.
Yeah, it's a Brainiac thing.
Okay.
Sure.
I had never heard of Brainiac before this, by the way, so I don't know shit about Brainiac either.
Brainiac's literally an alien that goes around, and he's the Great Arc. Somebody designed him. I think it was Kryptonians actually that designed him forever ago. And the whole putting cities in bottles thing is he goes and captures civilizations that will fall to preserve them, basically. But he has no way of undoing it. So ideally, there are still, like, in this case, if Earth were to be destroyed, there are still people alive in a whole city. The civilization's saved. It's just in a bottle.
Whack.
Yeah, all right.
Brainiac's actually one of the more interesting Superman characters. I kind of like Brainiac when he shows up in things, but yeah, he's weird as hell.
My exposure to Brainiac up to this point was like reading the sign while waiting in line for the Superman ride at Six Flags. Like, that's it. And that's how much I know about Brainiac.
See, and I don't even like roller coasters, so.
So Brainiac kind of captures Lex in this, like, these robot tentacly things, and manages, he doesn't kill him, but he, like, one of them, like, clamps over his throat basically to keep him from speaking. And he claims that Lex could have talked Superman into suicide in 14 minutes, because Lex is just that smart, I guess. Meanwhile, the Green Lantern Marine Corps are converging to attack, which kind of forces Superman's hand into a war. He doesn't want to do it, but at this point now, the choice has been taken away from him. Superman starts running through the Corps pretty effectively. Like, they're really no match for him. Though Hal keeps encouraging the Corps to start imagining Superman imprisoned in a series of micron thin boxes from which he can't escape, like boxes upon boxes upon boxes upon boxes. But Guy Gardner is there, unfortunately, and he fucks everything up. So Guy Gardner, I don't have a lot of experience with the Green Lanterns, but again, a Tom King project that I've really been enjoying recently called The Human Target, which is not completed yet, has Guy Gardner as a side character in there, and he's just the biggest douche on the planet. In this book, he has one line, and it's basically just him being a tool. He's like, I keep trying to imagine this, but then I start thinking about, like, a kid's show that I used to watch, and I can't think about this too much. Like, it's just so bad.
You have literally one job. It is to focus on this box.
Right, and Hal's like, focus up, and Guy's like, I can't, I'm thinking about Sesame Street.
Yeah. Oh God.
I was just thinking about the times in the cabin as a kid. This is Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Exactly. So yeah, he had no business being a Green Lantern. He's just the worst. Superman, of course, escapes from this because the boxes start to form around him like a safe, and of course Guy Gardner fucks this up, so he busts out of it and manages to really quickly grab the ring off of Hal and just takes off. The Themyscians come after him as well, but Supes also just kind of blows right through him and actually laser eyes Diana right in the fucking face. And it's like, sorry, Diana. Sorry, Diana. Sucks to be you. The U.S. releases all of the supervillains that they, the rogues gallery that they had formulated to try to stop him, and they failed to. Superman ends up at the White House, lands on the lawn, and Lois meets him on the lawn. She has a letter from Lex in her pocket that she says will stop him right in his tracks. Superman's like, I doubt that anything written on a piece of paper is going to do anything bad to me, but he reads it. It's exactly one sentence long. Lex has written this to him, and he basically is like, he's like, I've distilled what will break Superman down into one sentence. And the sentence is, why don't you put the whole world in a bottle, Superman? This causes Superman to break down because his guilt over the Stalingrad thing has just eaten at him this entire time. Brainiac's spaceship is attacked. And Superman realizes through this single sentence, he has been wrong this whole time.
Wait, that was it? That was the thing, huh?
That must
have been a lot of guilt.
It because he could never restore it to its original size. People in there are suffering. It's the one thing Superman can't fix, right? Because like it's okay. Illustrated throughout this entire series that Superman can solve just about every problem on Earth except for this one.
Also, Superman is not Catholic and or does not have a Puerto Rican or Jewish mother. So he's not really that used to guilt.
I feel that comment very, very keenly, yes.
Yep, there you go.
So this ruins him, this wrecks him. He orders Brainiac to stand down. But Brainiac reveals that all of this has been his plan all along, and really he's the one who's had Superman under his control in order to run the world according to his ideals. Lex, moments after this reveal, manages to like cut Brainiac's power from the inside. This isn't really fully explained how he does this, but it's comics. However, the spaceship that Brainiac is on is powered by half a dozen like micro black holes, and they are rigged to blow if something happens to him. So Superman, acting quickly, takes it into space where it explodes, and Superman is presumed dead from this. So now we deal with the aftermath. The world rejoices. Superman is dead. The tyranny of this alien communist is gone. And Lex Luther and Jimmy Olsen take over essentially the world's government and economy. In 2004, they win 101% of the vote. And it notes that to this day, scientists and mathematicians are baffled by the result. Everyone's a little too superstitious to blame the figure on a computer error.
I feel in this day and age that it's really not cool to claim that there's something shady about this election here. But I have to say 101% sounds just a little fishy.
It's just a bit off.
It was a legitimate election, Tony. Don't stop the steal.
Nope. I'm not even about ready to touch that. I have only had one white Russian here. I am not nearly prepared to dive into that kind of commentary. But I will ask, just to go back to the story itself of like, wait, out of like 6 billion people that were allied with the communist nation under Superman, everyone's suddenly rejoicing that he's gone?
Yep.
And it's really because and it's implied, it's never stated outright, but the lack, quote unquote, of dissent or unhappiness or whatever that's not really true. I mean, those things still exist even in this quote unquote communist utopia. It's just that Superman didn't really see it or was not,
or everyone was afraid of the superpowered, communist alien Jesus that would, reduce them to cinders with his laser eyes,
right,
or turn them into a robot if they dissented. So yeah, right. Okay,
yeah.
Because comics.
Also because comics. And the Batmen reappear to, basically be vigilantes on the street again, help restore order. Within 6 months, Luther is running the economy of both pretty much the U.S. and the USSR, but also like all the what he calls the global United States, which is basically implied to be the
Everything.
whole world. Yeah.
Okay. So communist alien Jesus falls, and suddenly the rest of the world lives happily ever after under capitalism. Like what?
Well, it's not really capitalism. What it's called is Lutheranism.
Okay.
And so Lex Luther eliminates cancer, eliminates AIDS, diabetes, blindness, every inherited form of illness. He invents a pill that means that people don't even have to sleep anymore if they don't want to. By the time he's 75, he has a one world government composed of artists, writers, philosophers, and scientists.
There are no more politicians.
Yeah, there are no more politicians.
I am sure there is absolutely no dissent toward this new world order. No,
none mentioned.
No one would ever
it's actually,
have issue with.
It's actually not mentioned at any point. By the age of 120, the entire solar system has been colonized. The triple, this is noticeable or notable. The triple had replaced the couple.
Huh.
I don't quite know. It's a weird thing to put in there. I don't
just
quite
gonna
know.
Slip some like pro poly. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
I
also feel like that calls back to like Vonnegut, and like every human being actually has 9 parents or something. I don't know.
Right. It's like oh God, did you ever see The Expanse?
Yeah, I've not seen it, but I've heard of it.
Okay, yeah. There's one of the I don't want to say the main character, but I guess he's kind of the main character. Has like 9 parents for real. He's combined with like all of their DNA combines to make him. So it's kind of like that, I guess. The average man can now lives to about 800. When Lex finally eventually dies, it says in the cusp of the 4th millennium. So he's been alive for like 1,000 years. And Lois is also still alive as well. And he confesses to Lois on his deathbed that his greatest accomplishment was defeating Superman. What in the world could possibly compare with saving my people from Superman? And he dies with a smile on his face. He's laid to rest, and it's revealed that the city of Metropolis was renamed Lexor over 500 years prior to his death. Many of the landmarks and buildings and whatnot have obviously come and go, but the Metropolis Towers still exist, and so does the Daily Planet building. So that's got to be like having a castle in the middle of like downtown, like New York, very outdated structure, but it's still there. At his funeral, Lois thinks that she briefly recognizes a gentleman who is wearing a dark blue suit and glasses. It's very obviously on the panel the Clark Kent alter ego of Superman. But she doesn't seem to realize that that's Superman, and he takes off.
Like literally, or just leaves?
Like leaves is just
okay. Just making sure, because saying Clark Kent takes off has a whole different meaning.
True. I should have been more clear.
Nope, you're fine. Carry on. Just want to clarify.
So as we go through this, so we're in Superman's perspective, and he talks about that he realizes the human race could in fact thrive without his intervention. So he's been sitting back and watching from a distance, like humanity's path, their evolution, and how they've become humanity has become more and more advanced, and led by what's a billion years of the Luther lineage. And he talks about, the artist Lena Luther, Lombard Luther, the Imagineer, Lori Luth 145, the Math Magician, Jordan Luth 1938, pioneering necronaut and first man to set foot in the afterlife. I want a whole fucking book about this guy. I am immediately compelled to find out A, how I can apply to be a necronaut, B, what that would entail, because I want in on this.
I feel like there's like a million spinoffs we could do here. There's a couple earlier that I was like, I want to know this more about this story. But wow, okay.
And so so his ancestors, his children, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren kind of evolve. There's Alex L, Jordan L, Lana L, and of course Lex Luthor's great-grandson to the power of 50, a young man called Jor-El, whose IQ exceeded even that of his beloved ancestor. This is where it is revealed that this Jor-El fellow has been acting strange, telling the world that their bright red sun has dimmed and is in danger of consuming them.
Their red sun?
Yes. He puts a small child into a little rocket ship and tells him that he doesn't want this crisis, this catastrophe to bring any harm to you, my son, little Kal-El. The rocket ship that brought Superman to Earth is not a rocket ship. It's a time machine. He sends Superman back in time to 1940 whatever. 1938.
Huh. Where it crashes in the Ukraine again.
Yep. And it crashes into the Ukraine again to start everything all over again.
And the man in black fled across the desert. Okay.
And that's exactly how it ends. So that's the big reveal. And let me tell you how delighted I was by that.
Yeah, no, that was a great twist.
Yes, I was not expecting that at all. I was like, what the fuck? This is great. Like, nailed this, stuck the landing 100%. And that is where Superman Red Sun ends.
Huh. All right.
Yeah. So like I said, I really enjoyed the story. I did not have nobody really, like, I was recommended to me again, over the past decades by several different people, and I never got around to reading it till now. And I would like to apologize to every single one of those people for not reading it sooner, because this was great. I really
Yeah, I'm on that track, except for most of the same people that recommended All-Star Superman.
Oh yeah, and Stop Clock can only be right twice a day, and so on and so on. But I will take the L and admit that those folks that recommended it to me were right, that I would enjoy this, and I did.
Well, so Tony, how did we do explaining Red Sun?
Really good. I'm really happy with this, and now I do really want to go read it myself. It's been something that's been recommended for years, and I've heard about it. I just never gone out of my way. Like, I remember I was listening to the podcast last year one day, and I was thinking in my head as I was driving and listening, like, of all the different stories that, like, I've heard of and never gone back to, because I kind of stopped really, like, actively collecting comics around 04-ish. Mm-hmm. And there have been a lot of big stories that have happened since then. So, like, I'm listening to the Hawks Pox episode or something like that, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's a lot of stories like this that I really want to know. And then Josh on the podcast had mentioned something about, like, went on to Marvel Unlimited, and I'm like, right, that's a thing I can do. Right. So I got a subscription and started, like, now I'm caught up on Mighty Thor and the Matt Fractions run on Hawkeye.
Oh,
and, like, all these other, like, really good Marvel storylines that I really wanted to go back and do, but I don't have that same affinity toward DC because, again, never really growing up with it and whatnot, and so I haven't gone back to read anything DC, even though I've heard good things. But now I really want to. So
no, it's worth your time. I recommend it. For a read on your own, because even though I did the presentation,
spoil the ending for me. That is what I signed up for.
There's a lot more to unpack in the body of the comic itself.
Way more chess.
Yes, I did more chess. But I did kind of skip over or gloss over some things or not mention some things, because whereas they're important to the story, they're kind of superfluous in the explanation. But they're interesting bits and beats in the story itself. So it's totally worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, might have to. And I want to thank you both for taking the time, because this is something that, again, I wouldn't have gone back to do. So thank you both for bringing me into it.
Well, thank you for suggesting it, because hopefully there's somebody else out there that just wanted to listen to what the story was, to see if they were interested enough to go through it. So yeah,
that's kind of our job.
Yep. Yeah, kind of what we do.
Well, yeah, I look at it as a lot of times, when I'm listening is, are these stories that I would want to go back and read, or is it something that I have read and don't really remember or whatever, and kind of go through a lot of those that way and pick and choose. but this was a good chance to get into something that I probably wouldn't have picked otherwise, that I had heard of, but again, have not gone out of my way to find a way to read this. So now,
right, yeah. Well, Tony, thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Yeah.
Please, everyone else, tune in next week in 2 weeks when we will be doing Dark Reign, the street level Daredevil Kingpin as mayor of New York storyline.
It's so fun.
Yeah, we have recorded it at this point. It is a lot of fun. Currently, I have that the next one on our list, but I don't know if we're going to get to it in time. Will be Cable and Deadpool. And I don't know if we're going to have that scheduled in time. So, it might be Cable and Deadpool. It'll probably be Dark Reign.
which is fine, because Dark Reign actually got me excited about Daredevil again. So
yeah,
it's a win-win.
She-Hulk got me excited about Daredevil again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, actually, I just finished the finale right before we sat down to record this. So
excellent.
Caught up now.
Excellent.
Oh yeah.
That finale cleared my skin, did my taxes, got me a girlfriend. Like, it was perfect.
It was fantastic. Yeah, no, very, very happy with it. And the incel tears of most of the Marvel meme groups that I'm on just sustain me.
Oh yeah.
So, oh my God.
Well done.
But until next time, take it away, Vandello.
A little wreck conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration alienating me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Vandello 2021.